Thank you. Hello, everyone. Last estimates in response to questions on notice from the Greens, you discussed the results of a voluntary survey of power stations as to whether they were planning to burn wood from native forest for energy under the Renewable Energy Target, and 5 responded that they were. Can you tell us which 5 they were?
Yes, Mr Williamson will be able to identify those. Essentially, it's a subset of, just while he's digging out that information, it's a subset of power stations which were previously accredited for native timber wood waste as a fuel source. So they've certainly kept that option open. It doesn't mean to say that they are. And in fact, our overall observation of this is really that we've seen no change. There have been no new power stations seeking accreditation for this. We've seen no change in the number of certificates that have been issued for this narrow class of fuel. But I think Mr Williamson will have all of that to hand now.
I believe I might need to seek some advice from Mr Purvis-Smith. I don't believe I can name those from the survey. What I can say, in addition to what Ms Munro has said, that of those 5, only 1 since the legislation passed has created any wood waste large generation certificates, and there's no suggestion that any of those wood waste certificates relate to native forest wood waste.
Right. So which one was that?
I'm sorry, I think we're advised that we can't actually disclose that. There's quite a lot of information that's protected under the legislation.
So under the Clean Energy Regulator Act, any information that we obtain in the course of our duties is what's called protected information, and it should only be disclosed in very certain circumstances. I think the nature of this information would contain some commercial in confidence information, and I understand the normal practice of the Senate committees is that commercial in confidence would not ordinarily be a reason not to disclose, but we do have the added impact of the protected information provisions. And I think it is important that when we conduct these surveys, we're able to receive that information from industry so that we can do an assessment of what is happening. So I think perhaps the better course might be for us to take that question on notice and for us to consider how we might be able to release that information. If
you could, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you.
And have you had any further responses to the survey since you answered that last question on notice?
Not that I'm aware of.
There have been some other responses. The only ones that have not responded so far, all of them bar one have never created a certificate from wood waste of any description, and the one that has not responded, who has created some from wood waste, is in New South Wales, where there are state laws prohibiting the use of native forest wood waste. So in essence, there was no need to follow up those non-respondents because they simply weren't in a category where they could be using native forest wood waste.
Okay. Do you know whether the Hazelwood Power Station is one of those that has any plans to use to burn wood from native forests for energy?
Senator, as Mr Purvis-Smith said, we would need to take that on notice as the other in terms of whether or not we can specifically talk about any response from an individual power station. I can certainly say they've never created a large generation certificate at all.
Okay. Have any native forest linked certificates been created under the RET since June 2015?
No, Senator.
Are you aware of the Tasmanian Resources Minister Paul Harris's call for proposals for burning wood from native forest from the southern forests via an expressions of interest process that ends on the 17th of February?
We are aware of that, but we haven't been engaged in any process, from media reports naturally, but we haven't been engaged in any processes with respect to potential accreditation of such a power station. So it's premature for us to comment on that.
So has the Minister been in touch, or the Tasmanian Department been in touch about it, been in contact with you about it? No, was that?
No. And to be honest, I mean, this is at an early stage in the development process, and so we wouldn't necessarily expect that.
Okay. Is there currently any power station registered to burn biomass in the Huon Valley?
In Tasmania, Senator, there is one power station which could, but the information we have is it hasn't operated for a number of years and it hasn't generated any LGCs, large generation certificates, from wood waste of any type for the last 3 calendar years.
So can you tell me whether that is in the Huon Valley?
Again, Senator, for the reasons Mr Purvis-Smith said before, I think we'd need to take that on notice. But there is no power stations, accredited power stations in Tasmania that have been creating any large generation certificates for a number of years.
Okay. Did the Southwood facility participate in your voluntary survey? Can you tell us that?
Senator, that name is not familiar to me.
Thank
So
you.
it's not on my list of
Not on your
accredited.
list of...
Just to clarify, it would only have participated in the survey if it had already it was already a registered, accredited power station.
So can you tell me whether is it an accredited power station? Then? So Mr Williams said you're indicating that it's not?
Senator, that name is not on the list that I have of the 28 accredited power stations who can use wood waste.
So would that mean that it's definitively not if it's not on your list?
Oh, well, Senator, sometimes facilities are named by multiple names, so I need to, as I say, there's only one accredited power station in Tasmania, and that's not the name.
That's not the
of
name.
it.
Okay. Has the government?
Have you got many more questions?
No, just
because
two
you
more.
and your colleagues have had a very good, very good run this evening, and we are going extremely late. So if you are able to perhaps just ask one more question, put the rest on notice, the committee would be very grateful.
Okay. Is Taran on your list of accredited power stations?
Yes, it is.
And is that the one Tasmanian one that is accredited then?
That's an accredited power station in Tasmania, correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. There being no further questions,